Hello chaps and chapesses, and this week we're sitting down with legend Peter Cockwill to talk about Alaska, where he's been going for the last 30 years. So Pete, you've been going to Alaska for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
When did you first go?
Late 80s, and it was all Jim Teeney's fault.
The legend Jim Teeney.
Yeah, the man. Met him in Oregon just on another fishing trip, persuaded me to go to Alaska the next year, and that was it. I mean, he ruined my life, really.
So where did you go that first time?
To the Kanektok, which is the top end of Bristol Bay.
Which was always very famous for kings, isn't it?
Kings and many other species. I mean, the river is gravel, end to end. It's the most phenomenal spawning medium.
And kit-wise, you were using in those days the teeny lines?
Yeah, still do. Still use the teeny lines. Yeah, yeah. He worked out the system, and he's a clever boy.
Yeah, no, he certainly figured that out long before anybody else. I remember adopting those lines when I was guiding in Norway, and we certainly had a weapon which we could get down underneath the white water and underneath.
Well, it was an integrated head, wasn't it? So it was easy to cast.
It was the first one that wasn't a shooting head either.
Yeah, yeah.
So from there, I mean, you've obviously taken lots and lots of groups to Alaska over the years, and it still holds that, that joy for you. It's
different now, and what happens to me now is I love taking people on what's going to be their once only ever trip, which for most people it probably is.
And quite often develops into...
Okay, it's my fault that they're now on their 10th trip, I know. That's by the by. But I love it on those once-only trips for people, and I see it again through their eyes. I love explaining it all. This is what you're going to see, and this is what these fish do, and this is what's running now, and this is the landscape, and the creatures, and the people who live here. And it's all like it's all happening again for me.
And is it still as wild as you remember, or...?
It's not as wild, no. There's more people around these days, but the fishing, I believe, has held up remarkably well. There was a kick down in the Kings for a few years, but they appear to be coming back nicely. And with the catch and release things that have gone on over the years, I think it's stood up very well indeed.
So it's a question I'm getting asked a lot, obviously with the very sad deterioration of our northern fisheries, which is not good for anybody. Where will our fishermen of the future come from? But Alaska is something which is on everybody's mind because they want to go and catch some fish.
Yeah.
And so if you were going to give advice to someone who was first thinking of going to Alaska, is there anything particular that you would point out or that they should consider?
Yeah, I'd say don't believe the people who say it's a fisher cast and therefore it's boring, because it isn't. You need to know a little bit what you're doing. Listen to the guides, do what they say, make sure you got the right kit. It's an expensive trip to go, for the fishing itself, for the flights, for your hotels, all that sort of thing. Have a thought about the gear, take the right stuff. It's
one of the things that frustrates me most, if you're going to spend all this money on a trip, don't scrimp on the kit.
Yeah.
Because, tackle failure is one of those things where you just go, oh, no. You just lost a 40-pound king salmon because your reel exploded because... Anyway, let's not
dwell on that one too much.
We've seen it happen too many times before.
Yes. But I think the other thing is to be not fixated on one thing. People talk about Alaska because of the king salmon.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to catch a giant fish.
They want to catch the big one.
Yeah. But if you go when the kings are in, you've got 7 species.
It's kind of like going saltwater fishing in the fresh, isn't it? That was one of the reasons I love saltwater fishing so much.
Well, because of the variety.
You never know what's going to swim around the corner next.
That's right.
And I suppose Alaska is the freshwater equivalent of that.
And that's what I say to people. Fish all the different species.
Yeah. Don't get fixated.
Waste your time on just fishing kings. And try all the others and have the different balance of rods, different sets of kit, and you'll have a lot of fun. And
in terms of season and species, do you want to just run through that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's relatively straightforward because the runs come in on such specific dates.
So it's down to literally a date, is it?
Yeah. Late June, the first of the kings are appearing, and the chums. Early July, the sockeye are starting to pour in, and humpies every second year. And then that works through July, and then end of July, early August, the silvers start to come. And if you want rainbow fishing, obviously you've got them all there at different times, but you need to look a little more carefully if you want to go for trophy rainbows. Because early season, they're obviously not quite so fat, but they're on the mice then.
I desperately want to catch a big rainbow on a mice.
It's so exciting.
It's really giggling like a schoolchild.
And the guides love it, because they're rowing the boat back down the river, and for them it's entirely visual.
So they can actually see.
They can see what's going on, and they get as much of a kick as the angler does. So for the guides, it's really interactive for them.
Oh, mousing.
And they're smart, those rainbows. I mean, they're not like our fish here, which only go 4 years or so.
Yeah.
Some of those rainbows are really old.
And the colours, the leopard spotting that you see on those fish, I mean, they are magnificent.
There's a fun thing which I can explain to you. If that is Alaska, with the Aleutians here, okay, and there's the main body of Alaska, and here you've got Kodiak and whatever, you get steelhead, the true migratory rainbow, up through British Columbia, Kodiak, and the Aleutians. Okay, you get the start of Bristol Bay here, and here the rainbows, when the salmon come in, the rainbows follow them.
Right.
And the rainbows disappear, run up rivers into the spawning rivers and up through the lakes and stuff. So the lower parts of those rivers, there's no rainbows anymore. They're gone.
Really? And presumably they're following the salmon because they're waiting for them to die.
Waiting for the eggs.
And the eggs.
Waiting for the eggs to start with.
And the flesh as well?
The flesh, they drop back downriver when the fish are dying and the carcasses are everywhere. But initially, they've gone.
Interesting.
Right? It took years to find this out. A little farther up in Bristol Bay, where I go, on the Kanektok, the rainbows don't follow the salmon.
Why?
They're still all down in the lower parts of the rivers. A little farther up, there's no rainbows. So here you've got this semi-migratory rainbow, if you like, following the salmon and stuff. And down here you've got the true migratories, the steelies and stuff. And then a little farther up, the ones that don't migrate.
That's really interesting. I wonder why that is.
It's what it is, and some of the tagging experiments in these regions have found these long-lived rainbows turning up in other rivers. So they may just drop down to salt and slip back up another one. What, like a
slob trout almost, isn't it?
Sort of, yeah.
Rainbows are an extraordinary species. I mean, why did they? I still don't understand why they reclassified steelhead as a Pacific salmon, because it's.
Well, within the Oncorhynchus family, you mean? Yeah.
I never really got that. I mean, okay, fine. Moving on.
Right.
And I think the other thing that's worth mentioning, certainly for people considering Alaska, is the silvers. A fresh silver clean off the tide. I've never experienced in Alaska, but I certainly have in British Columbia. You can almost not tell the difference between that and Atlantic.
Yeah, or fresh sockeye indeed. Sockeye straight off the ocean are magnificent. And silvers, just dynamite because they jump like crazy. And so do sockeye.
I think that as British fishermen, sometimes people can be a little bit snobbish. I think they're a little bit too focused on Atlantic salmon, and those species of salmon are fantastic.
Well, Pacifics colour very quickly.
Yeah.
And I think this is where the Atlantic salmon man sees them as somehow unclean.
Inferior.
Yes. Particularly with the chum, which, does colour quite dramatically.
But they're very cool.
Chum on a fly rod?
They're not called dog salmon for nothing.
And I think if chum grew as big as kings, I don't think I'd want to handle one on a fly rod. I really don't. They're the ones that break more rods every summer than the kings.
A friend of mine told me a little while ago that you don't want to hook a king on a fly over 40 pounds because that's just not fun. Yeah, I've done it a few times, and I've hooked 4 over the 50-pound bracket in my little life, and I only landed one, and that's because it behaved itself, and I just got dead lucky. The others... Because they don't have a lactic acid build-up, do they?
Appear not to.
So essentially you have a salmon species which behaves a bit like a tuna and doesn't have a lactic acid, or a milkfish actually, in point of fact. And they just keep going and going and going and going.
Yeah, they do. I remember fishing with Jim Teeney in southern Oregon one year on a small river where the fly record used to come from, the Trask, on the Trask River. And tiny little river. And where the pool structure was, you'd see at the end of the pool, you'd see the water go, vroom, which meant a couple of kings had come into the pool. Oh, they'd lifted the water. And horrified, really.
Some of them are absolutely... I remember fishing... I was fishing one of the Skeena tributaries, fishing away quite happily, minding my own business, and suddenly this thing came up next to me, which was like a small nuclear submarine that just porpoised like that. It was like, I want to get out of the water.
Yeah, I hooked one on this pool one day with Jim, and it left the pool, and Jim's just saying, break, break, break. That means not the reel, break the line.
Right.
You have no hope. It's going back to the ocean, break the line.
Break the line. Oh, God. So talk me through a setup for kings that you use these days.
It'd be something like a teeny 300 or 400. I think that's enough in most instances, unless you've got really heavy water.
I'm struggling to throw anything heavier than that off a sort of, what are you using, a 9'10" weight or
9'9" usually? 9'9" yeah, I can throw up to a 500 quite nicely on that.
You're a braver man than I think you've been.
Well, the man taught me, didn't he?
Yes, and, the man. Yeah.
But it's drift control.
Yeah,
that's what it's all about.
Remaining in contact with the fly.
Yeah, because the take is often so gentle.
Is it just literally just like a stop?
You just feel it slightly.
And then a slowly.
Yeah, and you better hit it. Yeah, they don't hit every fry with a massive thump.
9'9" weight.
Yeah, that's enough. I mean, the thing nowadays I know is the big double handers, which we see a lot of people using for kings, but they cast prodigious distances and have very little line control.
And the fish is normally under your feet anyway.
Really close. And if the water's dead clear, which it invariably is in Alaska, I really like split shotting for them.
Just
if I can see them.
Yeah.
I mean, chrome kings are pretty hard to see when they're sat on the gravel, but when they very quickly get a tinge of pink, and you can split shot them real neat then, just run it past their nose.
So that's basically like Euro nymphing for them almost.
Yeah, same thing we do for sockeye and stuff.
God. And flies wise?
Flies, just keep them simple. I mean, I've only ever used a teeny nymph, which is nothing but coloured pheasant tail. But if you're swinging a heavy line and stuff, yeah, if the fish are fresh in, some of the big intruder style flies are pretty good. They will hit them, but it's colour change. Colour change.
So that's what you go through rather than size change. You would go colour change.
Yeah.
Interesting. And what sort of purples, pinks, blacks?
Pink, yeah, then purple, black.
Any fly as long as it's pink.
Yeah, any fly in Alaska as long as it's pink. And for silvers, you were talking of earlier, hot green, chartreuse.
And any flash in the silver flies?
Yeah, because they're an aggressive taker.
Sparkly kind of thing.
Silvers are funny because if they've podded up in a pool, you may get one first cast, and you may get a couple of bumps after that, but you probably won't get another one until you change colour.
And then suddenly you're kicking again.
How do they know?
I don't know.
How the hell have they told all those others? But I've seen it so many times, and I've seen silvers side swipe a fly too when you're retrieving it, and they break from the bunch and hit it with their side, and it explains the occasional silvers hooked in the side.
Right.
I couldn't understand how that was happening in my first few years up there.
Until you watched them actually
Until I watched them get up a high bank, watch somebody fish, and they break from the shoal and side swipe the fly and go back in again.
Fascinating.
Well, I don't know why.
I've seen some saltwater species do something similar.
Really?
And it's almost like they're trying to...
territorial thing?
Territorial smashing, just smashing a bait fish off balance. It's basically a nudge, get out of my territory. Actually, a saltwater fish normally come back and eat it. But we've talked about kings, we've talked about chums. In terms of leader strength for kings?
Well, with a 9-weight rod, you can't pull...
More than 20 pounds.
More than 20 pounds, so 20 pounds enough. And if you've
do you like fluoro or do you like mono?
Just keep to maxima.
Maxima.
Yeah. And if you've if you've got to break, which sometimes you have, you don't want to lose the fly line. You want the leader to go. Because sometimes you just have to say, I've
Enough's
lost
enough.
this. Got a break.
Yeah, okay. So no GT technique here where you just bust the fly line in half. Okay.
I never fished GTs.
No, Pete, bad. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Alaska too. You know, when people go there, an awful lot of my guests for years would fly in, would fly out to the river. It's remote, whatever, and then fly home. I try to get people now to have an extra day or two.
Spend some time in Anchorage.
See something of the state. You know, I take them for a drive and for a day. See something. For the extra cost on top of everything else.
You've gone
it's
halfway
not
across
much.
the world already, so
Yeah.
you may as well actually. I think that is a very common fault with us fly fishermen. I think we often do that, don't we?
In and
We
out.
fly straight across the other side of the world into some incredible country with extraordinary culture, but actually we then just fish ourselves to a standstill and then just fly out again. and then someone says, sort of, you know, well, what's that country like? And you go, well, the river was nice.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's so spectacularly beautiful. So see something else and go see Mount McKinley, or Denali as it should be called, of course, and go down to the halibut ports, take a cruise, go see the whales, go see the bears at Brooks Falls. It might seem naff and touristy, but
if you've
it's
never seen a bear,
fantastic.
if you've never seen a bear, then you know you.
I mean, some of the places you go to, the bears are taken by the native peoples. It's their land, it's their country, and the bear does not want to be near man, so it keeps out of sight. But in other places, like Katmai Park, the bears aren't pursued, and you'll see them all over the place.
And they're fishing.
And they're fishing. They don't want man, they want fish.
Yeah, exactly.
Kodiak's interesting with the grizzlies there. A bit big on Kodiak.
You know, there are a few creatures that we do come across in our wandering fishing career that does make you nervous. Bears are one, sharks are the other.
From what you do, I'd be a little wary of sharks.
I think actually I trust sharks more than I trust bears.
Yeah.
Probably because I haven't come into contact with as many bears as sharks.
Yeah, I think I say quite often I'm at the sort of stage now in my fishing in Alaska where I sort of prefer not to see another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a thrill seeing them.
Novelty has worn off. I think is the expression. Yes.
I still think they're fascinating things to see from a little safe point of view, but like coming around the edge of a pool or going through some brush, and I think I don't want to do that again.
And do you make noise as you're wandering around?
Yeah,
do you sing loudly, bad songs and things like that?
Whistle, make stupid noises, anything. Don't wear a bear bell, but just make noise.
Yeah.
And because if they know you're there, they keep out of the way.
They just go away.
They don't want to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but don't ever surprise one.
No. Bad career move, potentially.
What, end of career?
So aside from, so there's grayling as well. There's Arctic grayling to chase.
Yes.
Dolly Varden.
Yep, the Arctic char, dollies. And the native rainbow, of course. And, I got a terrible problem with grayling.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a minor obsession. It's a bit like me and GTs.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'll happily fish 1 pound grayling in a pool that's got 30 pound kings sat another 20 feet out.
When a species gets under your skin like that, then there's nothing you can do about it.
There's no control, is there? No.
It's just like,
no.
Yeah, well. But I mean, if that didn't happen to us as fishermen, then I think it would probably be a sad state of affairs.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the time I put into trying to find a big Arctic and the places I went to. Mad, really.
But they're such spectacularly beautiful fish.
And they're old.
Yeah.
They're incredibly old. And I think this thing of catching something that's been around, like half of my life, it's a bit special. It's a thing I think we forget in our fishing careers, that some of these fish are old.
Yeah.
I mean, the rainbows, it's nothing for them to be 14, 15-year-old in Alaska.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
No wonder they got such big teeth.
I mean, I've been going for a long, long time. There was, by the base camp, they feed the pet rainbows, if you like, with when they're filleting sockeye and the eggs and stuff from sockeye, just feed them, and the guides can feed these wild rainbows with sockeye eggs in their hand.
Wow.
And they'll come up and take it from the hand. But
some of them are probably massive, aren't they?
They're big, some. They're smart. But there was one there, which was, he got the name Bucket Mouth because he got a twisted mouth. Been hooked on a spinner or something when he was young. And he was a big fish. And he was there every year for 11 consecutive summers.
Wow.
And he was a big fish to start with.
So by the time he'd eaten a whole bunch of freebies, he was probably enormous, wasn't he?
He was a fish well into doubles, yeah.
God, wild double figure rainbows. They tail walk, don't they?
Fabulous things they are. They're very special. In parts of Alaska, I mean, you can genuinely go in some parts of Alaska late in the season when they've fed up on flesh and stuff. You could realistically look for 15-pound plus fish.
That's extraordinary. And in terms of different kinds of operations in Alaska, as far as you know, we always talk about the fly-out lodge, the float trip lodge, or the fixed camp lodge. Do you have any preference for which ones you like to go to?
Well, now I'm old and decrepit, I like a lodge.
You like a lodge rather than a camp?
But I mostly go to a fixed camp.
Right.
But you've got a number of ways of looking at it. You can fish from the road system inexpensively. You've got to get to Alaska, of course. But you're going to be very busy. A lot of people. If you don't mind that, with the people who live in Alaska, which is their right, they're taking the fish for eat, so they don't care how they're coming out. If you want to mix with that, okay, you can have a cheap fishing holiday. But then everywhere else needs usually a fly out to get to it.
You need to be fishing with an operator.
Yeah, so a float trip where you go in the Avon inflatables is a fabulous way to see the country. But you've got to make some distance every day.
It can be quite hard work.
Yeah, and then you've got to make camp every day. If it's pouring with raining, it ain't so much fun. But it is a great way to see the country. And then the fixed camp locations, remote, yes, beautiful.
Using jet boats to get around.
Yeah, jet boats or prop boats or whatever. And then the lodges, which can vary from, you know, a fixed lodge with boats going up and down the rivers, or to the fly-out lodges. Depends what you want to do.
And a lot of those fly-out lodges now have got little outpost camps as well. So if you are going to go out, then you're going to get a chance to do a little bit of that sort of wilderness experience.
Yeah.
Which I think is quite important.
It is, yeah.
You don't want to make it too comfortable.
No, I don't think you should. You know, it is nice to have a lodge, especially in bad weather. But
yeah.
And Alaska, you just don't know what it's going to do.
You need to be prepared for all seasons in one day.
Be prepared for the seasons, yeah.
Layering up.
Yeah.
Base layers, mid layers.
And yet, you go up this summer, it was 95 degrees.
Wow.
Yeah, welcome to Alaska.
Costa del Alaska. We had Costa del Russia this year as well. So, and what is it that keeps you going back then?
I think it's that variety, and because I've seen so much of the country now, I've got a lot of friends up there, and I just love it. I mean, my wife's been with me 5 times.
Fantastic.
And she's not a fisher person.
Just enjoys the wilderness.
Yeah. This fishing thing's a terrible drug, isn't it?
I know, it's a bit of an affliction, really.
There's no recovery.
No, I think I've kind of discovered that, Pete. Sadly, I think I'm well on my way. Yeah, I don't think it's ever going to change.
No, nor for me. And you're a young man, God. So keep doing it.
As they say, it's not the age, it's the mileage. Sometimes
no, but I'd say, as we're talking about these things, anybody who's going to do a trip, research it.
Yeah.
Ask about it, look at it, research it. Don't just take what your mate says. Ask others.
Talk to the professionals.
Yeah. Yeah, the people who've been there, who know. Yeah, because you hear such silly comments sometimes.
It's a big country, and unless you speak to someone who you can trust, who actually knows it on the ground, it can go horribly wrong.
Yeah. Well, you don't get a lot of the pleasure you could otherwise get.
You could potentially be wasting a lot of your time. That's what I've always found with trips like this. Is you could get there, and yes, you could have a great experience, but you probably waste a couple of days.
Yeah.
Just travelling around.
Learn about the casting techniques before you go, so you don't. Not your first day is wasted learning how to cast and fish.
Yeah. And that's good advice anywhere you're going in the world, actually.
Do it.
Do it. Right. Well, there you are. You hear from the legend, Mr. Cockwill. Go and do Alaska. Pete, thank you very much. That was really helpful, very useful. Hope you found that video useful. As always, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Pete.
My pleasure.